controllers would probably be easier said than done since there are so many variations of them. But I'm going to be only ranking the controllers that you get with the console, including a couple other controllers. So without further ado, let's get into it. 9. PlayStation 2 controller or DualShock 2 controller. Before you smash that dislike button, I need you to hear me out for a second on this. Since I personally am a Nintendo gamer, not a PlayStation gamer, I am more used to the joystick being up here, and I personally prefer it being up there instead of down here. So my hands kind of cramp up after like 10 or 20 minutes of playing with it because you have to reach your fingers out. Usually the Nintendo joystick's like right here and then right here, but not in this case. So it's just a little clunky for me to use because I'm not quite used to it. But that doesn't mean it's a terrible controller, because it isn't, because you have the option to turn off the analog triggers, which is great for backwards compatibility with PlayStation 1 games. And it's just the overall great design of a PlayStation controller. It's just I feel like it's like a little clunky to use in my opinion. 8. Nintendo 64 controller. Before you disagree with me and say that DualShock 2 controller is better, I need you to listen to me for a second. Either a game uses, it makes you use the analog stick and the trigger button on the back and these buttons over here, or it makes you use these buttons right here. So, whether or not you like to use them, it's actually really comfortable. People think you have to use this to control, but you really don't. So, and you can also attach accessories like the Rumble Pack to make your controller have rumble. So, it's actually a pretty good controller if you try it out. 7. Wii controller. Now, there are definitely going to be people who agree on this or just totally disagree. This Wii remote is amazing. It has a back trigger button B, which meshes with your finger really well. It has an A button and D-pad that are easy to reach, and also has plus and minus buttons that you can use. You can also turn it on its side and use it like an NES controller to play 2D games. Overall, this controller is pretty good, but you can even power off the console with from the remote, which is the first for Nintendo, which is pretty impressive. So, but now to the problems. I have a big problem with the motion controls. They take like a second to respawn because they are just not very good in general. So this is the biggest problem that I have with it. But on that note, 6. Wii Motion Plus controller. This is the exact same thing as the past Wii Remote controller, except it has a little more grip on the back, and it has way better motion controls. I guess you could buy the accessory for the original one, but it feels more clunky to hold that way. So I would prefer buying the Wii Remote that has it built into your Wii Remote. So there's really not anything else to say about this controller. 5. NES controller. As you can tell by my channel avatar, I'm a pretty big fan of the NES controller and NES period. This controller was revolutionary for its time. It's first D-pad for home console. Well, first real D-pad that started putting D-pads on every controller from then on. They have the start select buttons and the BA buttons. It's a very simple controller, and it's a very simple controller to clean as well. You just need to take it apart and just rinse it out because it's not really that technical. So it's a pretty simple controller, and it can play tons of classics games perfectly, and there's really not much else to say about this beauty of a controller. 4. SNES controller. This controller is basically an upgraded version of the NES controller. You could tell by my console ranking video that I'm not the biggest fan of the SNES. That doesn't mean that it doesn't have an amazing controller. This adds 2 shoulder buttons, which are a first for Nintendo, and gives a little grip to the controller. And they also added X and Y buttons for additional buttons to run with. And of course, they have the classic D-pad, start and select still in B and A. But they paid attention to detail on this. Like, notice how there are grooves in the X and Y buttons, and smooth for the B and A buttons. So if you're running with the Y button and then just push B, it's easy to slide your finger off of it because it's smooth. So it's just really legendary like that. My only gripe about this is that the start and select buttons are a little too you need to push them like right in the middle instead of just like hitting them. You have to like push like that to get them to respond. But other than that, this is a really great controller. Wii U gamepad. This is people are definitely going to disagree with me on this one, but I just think it was even though people hated the Wii U, I feel like this controller is still great. It meshes great with your hands in the back. It has buttons in the perfect spots, has easy to use joysticks, and everything just feels great. It even has a stylus and a touchscreen you can use, and it pops back into the console like so. TV button is kind of handy, but nobody really uses it. Power button, obviously. Home button, you can control with either the D-pad or the joystick. And there's just everything with the start and select buttons. Everything's great about this controller. There's not really a good reason to have a camera or anything. But other than that, this is just a great controller. 2. Switch Joy-Cons. These are amazing controllers. They're just compact in your hands. They have amazing buttons. You can even detach them and use them as separate controllers. They have HD Rumble, just the classic buttons, except for it's a little weird that they have a D-pad that's split up into 4 different buttons. I think find that a little weird. They have a capture button to capture images while you are playing your games. And they just have great features in all. HD Rumble and an IR camera on the right Joy-Con. This is just an all-out great controller or controllers, and they just feel great. My only gripe is that another gripe I have is that you can fit them in your hands. They're that compact, but they're not. That's not holding me from putting them lower on the list. 1. GameCube controller. I promise you with all of my heart that why did I say heart? That was weird. Anyway, I promise you with all of my mind that's even weirder. Anyway, I promise you that I am not biased towards the GameCube. This is it's just that the GameCube does so much right, including this controller. As you can see, it looks a little weird, but A is the main button you'll use, and B is the second most, and then Y and X are meant to, be bounce off of. Joystick feels great. It's way better than the plastic joystick and the N64 controller. Little compact D-pad at the bottom, start/pause button. Little shoulder button at the top, and the shoulder, and the analog triggers. These just feel so good to push. If you push them down once, that could be for something, but if you push them down all the way, that could be for another control scheme, so you could customize your controls for GameCube. And now if you look, here's the C stick right here, and if you recognize C stick, there are C buttons on the N64 controller, so that's just basically making it so it's easier to control your camera in GameCube games. So this is why it hit number 1 on my list, and yeah. Video was a little easier to make than the console video because controllers are easier to rank than consoles, because consoles actually produce the games and controllers are just how you control the games, so it's easier to rank that way. So without further ado, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you guys have a great day, and please consider subscribing to my channel and smashing that like button. So I'll see you in the next video. See ya.